Good morning and welcome to the Koonenberry Gold Investor Webinar. All attendees are in a listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question to the company, please enter it into the Q&A panel within Zoom. I'll now hand over to Koonenberry Managing Director, Dan Power. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Nathan. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you take some time away from the sea of red on the ASX this morning to listen to what I think is an exciting and developing story for Koonenberry Gold. Just click through the next screen here. Okay, so just briefly on our corporate structure, this is put together as of Friday last week. You can see that we've had a healthy re-rate in our share price, which has been on the back of lots of exploration efforts in the field, as well as some good results that are getting a lot of attention, all that within a rising gold price. It's a good time to be a gold explorer. In addition to that, you can see that in terms of our capital structure, we're actually extremely tightly held. We have over 70% of the register in the top 50 and over 50% of the register in the top 20. So some really sticky shareholders there. In terms of the board and management, I'm very lucky to be supported by an extremely experienced board of directors, and also very lucky to have a great support from a technical team with a lot of experience, both in New South Wales and around the world, in all types of systems, from orogenic gold, which is what we're exploring for at the Koonenberry project, through to epithermals and porphyry style deposits. And in addition to that, we're being very well supported by the likes of DAC Capital, Lion Selection, and Lowell Resources Funds Management, as well as numerous other funds. And I guess just lastly on this slide, that cash position is from the end of December, and including our recent capital raise. So that number will come down slightly, and everybody will be privy to that cash position for the March quarterly. So just an introduction to Koonenberry. In my mind, we have an enviable project pipeline that would really fit into a mid-tier gold and copper exploration company. And so just as an overview, we originally had the one project out near Broken Hill, which is called the Koonenberry project. We still have that, of course. And then late last year, we acquired the Enmore project and a series of projects in the Lachlan Fold Belt, which we're calling the Lachlan project. So at Enmore, quite excitingly, we've recently released our first drill hole result, which was 170 meters at 1.75 grams of gold from quite near surface, just from 77 meters down hole. And quite excitingly, a very high grade intercept towards the end of that intercept at 18 meters at almost 10 grams. And we're currently drilling at Sunnyside, and that work will continue for the foreseeable future. We also, as I said, we have the Lachlan project, and interestingly here, we have two joint ventures with Newmont within that portfolio of projects in the Lachlan. I won't spend a lot of time on that today, but it's worth knowing that Newmont are currently actively drilling on two of those projects. So as a junior explorer, we actually have 3 irons in the fire at the moment with multiple projects being drilled. And then, of course, we have our Koonenberry project, which we still very much feel is prospective for multi-million ounce gold deposits. It's just about a matter of priorities at the moment. And at the moment for us, the Enmore project is taking priority, and for good reason. So just an introduction into the location of the Enmore project. You can see on this image on the left-hand side here that we're about 20 kilometres south of the Hillgrove mine, which is a development project for antimony and gold held by Lachlan Resources. We share very, very similar geology in terms of these granites, which are intruding the sedimentary host sequence and the structural architecture is extremely similar between the Hillgrove mine and our Enmore project. If you jump across to this image here, perhaps what we're seeing at Hillgrove versus our Enmore project is slightly different in the sense that ours is a predominantly a gold project. Whilst we do have antimony, it tends to be in parts per million levels rather than percent levels that you might anticipate for economically viable operations such as Larvotto's putting forward to the market. And we are drilling at our Sunnyside prospect. It is just one of many prospects within the project area. There's around 30 prospects and historical workings and that type of thing. So whilst as I said, we're currently drilling there, in the future we see many more drill targets at our Enmore project. So drilling right down into Sunnyside, you can see here images that I've put into the market recently. So this one's showing our recent drill hole, the 45 meters at 0.6 from surface, and then trending down 170 meters at 1.75 grams per ton from 70 odd meters. And then at the end of the hole, well, not the end of the hole, but at the end of the intercept, almost 20 meters at almost 10 grams. And the key takeaways here are this was a twin hole, which we've told the market was important because the original historical RC hole was obviously lacking structural information, being just RC drill chips, but it was the best drill hole on the project to date. So we had to twin it, and we stepped off about 5.5 meters in terms of the collar position. So it's not exactly a twin, but it's about as close as you're going to get. And yeah, the key takeaway here is this hole ended in 3 meters at 8 grams. And so the significance of that is and that was from 171 meters. So from 173 meters almost, we had our 18 meters at almost 10 grams. So we've extended the mineralization that the previous owners had drilled at Sunnyside. We've also drilled 3 additional holes. They're all currently at the lab with results pending. And we've seen in each of those drill holes visible gold. So things are looking extremely positive. Where we've had visible gold in this hole 1, that's where we had the high grade, of course. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting these results back from holes 2, 3, and 4 over the coming months. You can go through this at your own leisure, but I've included here the core trays. You can see some of the drill hits here over 1 meters or 30 centimeters. We sample on geological intervals as well as the meter marks, depending on the geology at the time. And some really great high grade numbers in here, 144 grams and that type of stuff, which bodes well for future resource work. And as I said, yeah, drilling is ongoing. We've got about a 3,000 meter program, and we're a bit over halfway through that. So I just want to step you through some of what we might expect in the coming weeks from some of this drilling, and we're very encouraged by what we're seeing geologically. So this is hole 2, which is a 25 meter step back underneath hole 1. And these are the types of rocks here. It's all hosted in granite. And where we see an increase in alteration and veining, we typically would expect to see gold mineralization, obviously pending results from the lab. But as I said, in terms of geological observations, very encouraging. So from 175, we see the alteration and veining start to kick in. A bit over 200 meters, we're in visible gold zones. Down to 220, even at 287, we're seeing visible gold in the core here associated with sulfide breccias, and these later stage quartz sulfide iron carbonate veins, which cross-cut the shear fabric. And then all the way down to 340 meters almost. This is this black material is a very fine-grained pyrite and Arsenian pyrite, which is known to be associated with gold mineralization at the project. So just stepping through into holes 3 and 4, you can see here that we have mineralization in hole 3. at 200 meters. A nice slug of visible gold here at 250 meters. And these veins here, these are the critical ones, these later stage quartz, plus or minus sulfide with iron carbonate alteration salvages. And then even down here at 260, we're still seeing visible gold. So that's hole 3, and I'll just skip back to give you context. So hole 3 is the one that's drilled from the north up here down towards the granite sediment contact. So this hole will give us a good feel for the potential widths of the system in this location. That's one to look out for. Then hole 4 is drilled parallel to holes 1 and 2. And again, we're seeing good alteration, veining, and visible gold over extensive widths, and then all the way down to 320 meters. We didn't see any visible gold in this piece of core, but you can see that this vein style here is identical to this vein style here, where we do see visible gold in hole 2. So I hold good hopes for holes 2, 3, and 4 in summary, and watch this space in terms of the reporting of further results. And then just stepping back at the more of a district scale, we're not just, we don't just have Sunnyside, the prospect. This is a gold in soil grid over the project. And you can see that the higher grade gold in soils tend to line up on these fault zones. So we have lots of different prospects to get to, some of which have seen some drilling. Others have seen historical work by old timers from 100 years ago when they were mining out here. And you can see some of the grades here, you know, 2 ounces here and 2 ounces there, and 74 grams here. And then all the way down at Lone Hand, which is our prospect out towards the east, we see underground historical face sampling of 234 grams per tonne of gold. So that really bodes well for the potential of the district to host not just this broad bulk tonnage potential that we might be seeing at Sunnyside, but also sort of more narrower, higher grade material. And then just quickly jumping through into the Lachlan projects, we have a series of 10 projects here in the Lachlan Fold Belt, and we are a significant landholder within the Lachlan Fold Belt and sit alongside the likes of some of the majors and mid-tiers. 2 of these projects, as I've said earlier, are in joint venture with Newmont, and I'll just introduce those 2 projects to you quite briefly. So our Junee project, it's prospective, amongst other things, for porphyry copper gold style mineralization. And the key takeaway here is this is what Ridgeway and Cadia look like. And so Newmont in recent times came in and bought Newcrest for the Cadia mines, Australia's biggest gold mine. And they are trying to find, and are encouraged by the exploration that they see here for those types of porphyry copper gold systems. And you can see, whilst we haven't had an economic drill intercept yet, or potentially economic drill interceptors yet, we're getting pretty close. You know, a couple of 100 meters at 0.2 isn't very different to what they actually are currently mining at Cadia. So Newmont are extremely encouraged by these early signs, and they continue to explore here, having spent over $24 million now. And the other thing I'd like to point out with this project is Koonenberry Gold has a 20% free carry through to commercial production on this. So if Newmont do happen to find Acadia or something of that like, then we have a 20% free carry on that. So that's just amazing potential upside there for us. And then jumping to the Fairholme project, where Newmont have also conducting some drilling. The exploration target here is for a North Park style mineralization, where you tend to see these magnetic complexes that are associated with the volcanics and igneous complexes that are then intruded by late pencil porphyries that are extremely high grade. And those pencil porphyries tend to have a lot of sericite and pyrite and magnetite destructive alteration. And that's what causes these donut-like magnetic lows within the magnetic high complex. So, and this is what one of the targets that we have at Fairholme, and it's postulated that that could be something similar to what we're seeing at North Parks. And then just quickly, two of our other projects within the Lachlan Fold Belt. We have our Breakfast Creek project, which is about 55 kilometres south of Cadia. And what we're seeing here at surface is gold and copper-rich gossans. So gold to 7 grams, copper to 18.5%, in obviously oxide copper. And the target here, what we really like is for a Browns Creek type skarn related system. And you can see Browns Creek is just here, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we have similar geology. We certainly have similar grades, and this is one that we're trying to get ready for drilling in the coming months. And then moving to Prince of Wales, you can see here that it was mined over 100 years ago. They were pulling out 9 grams of dirt here. Quite significant underground workings, 170 meters deep, and 1.8 kilometers of workings over about 4 or 5 different levels in the system. And what we think is going on here is we have 2 trends of mineralization. One is associated with a contact zone here and potential magnetite destructive alteration over a 4-kilometer strike length. And the second one is over at Back Creek, where we think we have an emerging story there. So again, watch this space. We've got a fair bit of work to do there in terms of surface soil sampling and things like that, but this is one that we'd like to be drilling this year. And then just to overview, 3 key projects, all focused in New South Wales. We're drilling at 3 projects currently. It's very exciting what's happening at Enmore. Those gold grades and widths are really quite exceptional. So yeah, more good stuff to come out of Enmore. And then the Lachlan projects, as I said, 20% free carry on the Junee project. And we have a swag of other projects, 10 in total in the Lachlan Fold Belt. And then just to summarize, there's several things that I like to look for in companies that have a good chance of being successful. One is fundamentally you need good geology. So we can certainly tick that box. You need scale, you need enough size. So if you find something, you've got a good chance to develop it. You need a great team, which I think we have. And we also have great support from our shareholders. We are well funded for discovery, and that's why we can have these drill programs ongoing. And then you can see here that I think we've already had the discovery drill hole drilled at Enmore. So in terms of this value creation curve, I feel like we're right at this inflection point here where if we have success and continued success with the drill bit, we can really ramp up here in terms of the share price and adding value for shareholders. And so with that, Nathan, I think I'll hand that over to you, mate.
Thanks, Dan. Just a reminder, if you would like to ask a question to the company, please enter it into the Q&A panel. Got a series of questions here, so we'll work through these. First one, with 1,400 meters of drilling to go, when do you expect to complete the maiden program at Enmore, and what's the next step once that's done?
Yeah, so probably around about another 6 weeks for that drilling to be completed. And obviously, depending on weather and things like that as well, we've had a lot of rain up at site, which has slowed the program down a little bit, but we will progress, and we're running that on a double shift basis. And then what was the second part of the question, Nathan?
What's the next step once that's done?
Oh yeah, obviously. So we wait for results and interpret those results. We're also currently doing a structural study to help us put all that together within the context of the geology as well.
Thank you. How will the company balance the planned drilling access across multiple targets and projects to ensure maximum value for money?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's always something that as an exploration manager or managing director that you have to put irons in the fire and give yourself a chance at being successful. And the way we do that is through a ranking and rating exercise of our projects, which are built around prospectivity and the level of advancement and obviously timing. can come into it as well with field seasons and cropping seasons and things like that. At Enmore, we're kind of fortunate that it's cattle grazing country, so weather permitting, we can have reasonable access all year round.
Thank you. Another question here. Given the 64% uplift in screen fire assay results, are you planning to re-assay earlier or future holes as standard? And could this materially improve historical grades?
Yeah, so this is something that's has come about with our last round of work with hole one, and it's really quite interesting. So obviously in the core we do see coarse gold, so it's not surprising that the screen fires did upgrade. On average, it was over 30% of an upgrade, and then on the higher grade samples above 10 grams, it was up to, I think it was 68%. So to answer the question in full, yes, we will be doing screen fire assays as a routine on particularly higher grade samples, but as we understand more about the system, we'll also be applying it to samples that might return, say, greater than a gram, and we're working through that process now. And then the last part of that question, would it materially have an impact on historical drilling? Yes, it probably would. And for future, I think it's going to have a big impact in terms of if we can put, you know, volumes and shapes and grades together and start to talk about tons and contained ounces and that type of thing. A 30 to 60% uplift in those numbers is going to be quite substantial.
Thank you. How does Sunnyside compare to the broader Enmore system in terms of priority and potential?
Yeah, well, obviously we're hitting visible gold in each of the holes that we've drilled, 4 holes so far, and then obviously the results are coming in with what we anticipated and even a little bit better, to be quite honest. So it is the focus for us for the near term. However, having said that, at the same time as we're drilling, I'm making use of having people in the field. So we are conducting soil sampling at some of the more the targets in the district that we rank more highly and could be quite cheaply brought up to drill ready status with more detailed soil sampling. So we have those things ready for drill testing at the right time.
What is the expected cost per metre for the current diamond drilling program, and how much cash runway remains post-program?
Oh, that's a good question. The all-in cost is somewhere in the order of about $400 a metre. So that's inclusive of direct drilling rates, laboratory sampling, you know, labour hire, accommodation, all that type of stuff. So that's pretty good for in terms of the industry competitiveness there, in terms of the all-in costs. And in terms of our runway, that's a pretty simple calculation that any investor can do. If we have $5 or $6 million in the bank at $400 a metre, that's quite a substantial amount of drilling and runway going forward.
Thank you. This is a two-part question. What's the status and scope of your soil sampling and geophysics across the broader Enmore tenement? And secondly, have you already defined any additional targets outside Sunnyside?
Yeah, so we're blessed to have a pretty good widespread soil sampling database that was collected by the previous explorers. And as I said at the outset, there's a whole bunch of other prospects and targets there. Sunnyside's only one of them, and some of them have been mined over 100 years ago with, as I said, results up to 230 grams per tonne in face sampling from the underground mines there. So yeah, lots of scope for additional prospects to be drill tested, you know, over the coming months.
How many rigs are currently operating at Sunnyside, and how long is the current drill program scheduled to run?
Yeah, so we just have the one rig running at Sunnyside at the moment, which we thought was pertinent for a first drill program, whilst we're still figuring out the geology and the controls on mineralization, and some of the softer things as well, like building trust with landowners and things like that. Um, and then the second part of the question, how much longer? I think, as I said, probably another 6 weeks of this program. That's if we choose not to extend the drill campaign, which is also a possibility. Weather dependent, of course, coming into winter. It does sit up on a plateau up there at 1,100 meters. It can get a bit chilly in the winter.
Can you discuss the recent acquisition of land adjacent to Enmore?
Yeah, so we when we acquired the Enmore package from GUE, we quickly did a geology review, and we were encouraged by the ground adjacent to the Enmore exploration license that has the similar geology, the same through-going faults, which we know are important for controlling fluids and gold mineralization. As well as that, we are fortunate enough to have previous work, soil sampling, that shows that there are already gold and antimony targets, particularly to the northwestern corner of the new exploration license. So yeah, we've got a bit of work to do to get on the ground there, and to take those things forward before we would consider drilling any of those.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions come through about Newmont, the Newmont JV. So in summary, when can we expect any news from that program?
So we have a great relationship with Newmont. I actually worked for Newmont myself for 16 years, so I'm familiar with some of the management that's there. And so we get monthly updates from them. So yeah, in terms of when might Koonenberry shareholders expect news flow, I guess it's when I get updated by Newmont, and as I said, that's on a monthly basis, monthly in arrears, of course. So yeah, I think it's just a watch this space for investors on those, but we are free carried on those, so it's not costing us anything. And if Newmont make a discovery, that they're only chasing the big deposits, the plus 5 million ounce deposits. So we'd certainly like to have a piece of one of those.
Thank you. There are no further questions at this time, so I'll now hand back to Dan for closing remarks.
Right. Well, I think this was really beneficial. I hope there was a lot of people on the call this morning. I think it was about 60 people. Yeah, so hopefully it was valuable for you guys. And if I get that sort of feedback, then it's something that we would look to be doing again. Thanks, Nathan.